Right, let's try that again. The previous video, I had recorded it well, but all of a sudden the picture just turned. But I guess when you're making a message that you really want to, a serious message, things always go wrong. So today, Zimbas, I'm talking to us, challenging us to do some introspection. In the past week, talking to a friend of mine as usual, we're talking about how things are not okay in Zimbabwe, and he complained about this thing and the other thing. And while we were in the conversation, I said to him, "Brad, listen, we've complained about where our politicians go wrong. We've complained about how everybody else is wrong in Zimbabwe. But today I want to challenge you to do one thing. Today I don't want to hear you blaming somebody else for what they have done wrong in Zimbabwe. I want you to look at yourself and tell me what you are not happy about yourself and what you are not happy about that you haven't done for Zimbabwe." Funny enough, he couldn't answer me. He couldn't tell me what he's done wrong. He continued to point fingers at everybody else. And then I said to him, let me tell you what I have done wrong. Let me tell you what I regret about what I have done for Zimbabwe. First and foremost, I left Zimbabwe at the age of 22. I left Zimbabwe at the age of 22 because this was the time that the land reform program had begun. I got an offer to come to South Africa. And because everybody perceived the land program as something negative because white people were losing their land, my parents, my relatives, the entire family encouraged me that you must leave Zimbabwe. There is no option if you want a future. I believed this. I believed that Zimbabwe was truly dead because white people had lost the land. So I left and came to South Africa. I left land. I left mineral resources. I left an ability to own a part of my country because I believed in the propaganda that we need white people for me to be able to succeed. One of the worst decisions I ever made in my life, and one of the things that I regret the most in my life. And unfortunately for me, I got into South Africa. Within the first year of being in South Africa, seeing these yellow bones, I got 2 women pregnant. 2 women pregnant that then made me tied down to this country. And while I was here, I was doing business. Taking X-ray films to Zimbabwe. I was taking cars to Zimbabwe, buying and selling, exporting cars to Zimbabwe. I pay my duties. But whenever I made my profits, I never reinvested them in Zimbabwe. I brought them back into South Africa and reinvested them into my lifestyle in South Africa. When the diamonds came out, when everybody was rushing for diamonds in Zimbabwe, I was one of the very first people to leave South Africa and go to Marange and start buying diamonds. I took the money out of Zimbabwe. I sold the diamonds outside Zimbabwe. I never reinvested the money back in Zimbabwe. Now, some of you might ask yourself, why am I saying things that could incriminate me? Well, if they incriminate me, good. Because I haven't played my part. I've externalized my profits outside Zimbabwe. I've not reinvested in Zimbabwe to create solutions for developing Zimbabwe. I've not reinvested in Zimbabwe to create jobs for somebody else. But every single time I'm complaining about the condition of Zimbabwe. I complain that there are no jobs. I complain that there's no investment, but I have never invested. Who did I expect to invest if I didn't play my part in investing my 50 cents? If I made 50 cents in Zimbabwe and I didn't reinvest even 20 cents, who do I blame for the fact that Zimbabwe is where it's at? I need to start blaming me. I need to stop blaming everybody else. I need to stop pointing fingers at everybody else and start pointing fingers at myself. And as much as I complain about how it's difficult for us to get land in Zimbabwe, not once have I gone to my district, to my chief, and asked for the procedure of applying for land. I've never asked for land. I've never applied for land. But I say that the politicians keep taking all the land. How do I know if I've never tried the process? I've never looked to apply for a claim, for a mine. So everything that I complain about, I'm complaining because I have not tried. I don't know my indigenization policy. I don't know Zim Asset. I don't know what it entails, what it's all about. I don't know the indigenization policy and what it entails and the benefits that it entails for me as a Zimbabwean. I've not bothered to meet with people in Zimbabwe and create relationships so that we can look for ways to create consortiums and attract foreign investment. So the question is, why do I keep pointing at everybody else, yet I haven't played my part? I was given a good education. I went to government schools. I've never developed and given a cent to any of the government schools that I went to in Zimbabwe. I've never come together with other people to say, let's come together, let's create a body, let's create some movement to try and donate money to our old school. And when the guy that tried to do it, a guy called Brian Masenda, tried to create an Old Malvanians contribution club, or an Old Malvanians, concerned Old Malvanians club, we all didn't give him the money or contribute money to create a fund that was going to develop our school. So why do we keep complaining? So I've said, and I'm challenging each and every one of you that's watching me now, that this coming week, you're not going to blame anybody else for the condition that Zimbabwe is in. You're going to start holding yourself accountable for the things that you feel in your heart that you haven't done to make Zimbabwe better. Write a list. Write a list of all the things that you could have done that you didn't do. You should have done that you didn't do. And then try and work a strategy to fix some of those things. So for those of us who cry about there being no jobs, did your parents create jobs? Have you created jobs? And if you haven't, who's supposed to create those jobs in Zimbabwe? Let's ask ourselves those questions. Your school, if you want education to continue to be as good as it was when you were there, have you contributed to your school to ensure that it's got money to look after the school, money to maintain the school? Are we donating anything, anywhere to ensure that our schools have the kind of money to ensure that the children that came after you have got the education that you got? I haven't done it. And I need to ask you if you have done it. So let's stop pointing fingers at everybody else. And let's start pointing fingers at other people, at ourselves. I, for one, have spent my time investing in property, investing in cars in South Africa, instead of buying machinery, instead of buying mining equipment, instead of buying industrial equipment to go and start industries in Zimbabwe. I've spent my time traveling across the world, but I haven't saved enough to invest in Zimbabwe. So how can I continue to blame everybody else without blaming myself? So now, I'm not going to be complaining anymore. I need to go down to Zimbabwe. I must apply for land. My country took that land for land restitution for my benefit. I'm going to apply for land. And when I get the land, I'm going to invest in cows, goats, chickens. Because right now, everything that I have here doesn't belong to me. It belongs to the bank. The day that I own a chicken, the day that I own a cow, the day that I start to own plants that are growing out of the ground, then I've begun to make true wealth. Today, if I die, my company dies with me. That's not a legacy. That's not something I can leave my children. But if I've got crops in the ground, if I've got cows and chickens, if I've got a borehole, then I've got true value. So I'm challenging each and every one of you and saying to you guys, it's easy to point fingers. It's easy to blame. But I want you to spend this whole week asking yourself, have you done what you can and what you should to ensure that your country is a great place? And before we hold ourselves accountable, we need to look at Zinzaredu, Vabereki Vedu. We all wanted jobs in Zimbabwe, but did your parents create the jobs? Did your relatives create the jobs? Did your bloodline create the jobs? There are bloodlines that created jobs for their children. The Bokas are comfortable because their father worked hard. The Mutasas are comfortable because their parents and their bloodline worked hard. If you read into their histories, these people, their parents, their grandparents, they worked to make sure that their children have something to inherit. Have your parents made sure that you've got something to inherit? But we can't blame our parents for too long because we are now parents too. So have you done anything for your children to ensure that they've got a job? If you're not creating a job for your child, don't expect somebody else to create your job for you. Don't expect me to create a job for your child. You create a job for your child. And let me not expect you to create a job for my child. Those are the shortcomings that I have had. And I'm going to work on them. I'm going to start reading the policies of my nation. I'm going to start understanding the development frameworks of my nation. I'm going to start understanding the laws of my nation. I'm going to understand how my Reserve Bank makes its money, its ownership structure. I'm going to understand my constitution. Because I can blame everybody else, but until I know my country, I understand my country and participate in it, no one is going to build it for me. Spread the message. Write your list and start to tick it off.